Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens, the screenwriting step-by-step project, episode number 122. My name is Glenn Gers, and I come to you every Monday through Friday, if I can make it, at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to walk you through the step-by-step process of writing a script. I am currently writing a TV drama pilot script, but it doesn't have to be that. All scripts have basically the same format and structure, and the process is usually pretty much the same. So I am trying to teach screenwriting, teach the process of screenwriting by showing you, letting you look over my shoulder, talking my way through the process of coming up with an outline, figuring out the story, writing the rough draft scene by scene, and now we are into rewriting the rough draft, making sense of it, looking through the outline, trying to figure out what's right, what's wrong. That is the project. Every afternoon I come, I do an hour of it, and I talk to people as I do. Hello, I write. Good to see you. Great to have you all here. For those of you who are watching and are not live, because that's most everybody, you can ask questions by going to writingforscreens.com and clicking the little button that says Contact Me. It's all over the place on almost every page. It will open up a little window. You can write me an email directly and I will try to answer you ASAP. Or if you don't like emails for some reason, you can just write a comment here under this video or any video on the channel. Those all come to me in the form of emails, but I will go answer the comment on YouTube as best I can, as soon as I can. Hello, Matthew. Hello, Aspen Runes. I don't know if we've met. Hello, Jean. Hello, Natasha. Hello, Jacob. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, all of you live players. Okay, so what we are doing today is working through the Madelyn character arc outline. What I did was, let's just show the people at home. Hello, Rachel Waring. What we did was we took the outline and we made a duplicate of it, called it the Mad outline for Madelyn, and then I cut out everything in the outline that Madelyn wasn't in. So now this is just Madelyn's experience through the pilot episode. Every scene that she's in, that's what she's going through. That's her story. There may be things happening in other scenes, but she's just tracking on her life. Every character experiences every scene of a story as part of their own life. They're the hero of their story. And so one good way to understand where each character is in any given scene is to say, what's their story? If I was just them walking through this crazy story, what would I be trying to do? What would I be having felt and wanting to feel? So that's what we do. So yesterday we went through a bunch of it and we talked about some of the more complicated dialogue scenes. And then I got to a big one here, Madelyn and Norman over the diner meal. And that one, gotta tell you, that one just felt like a mess. It was just this scene where I knew that they had the opportunity to talk. So I just threw stuff in the rough draft. Now I am looking at it and I am saying, it's not working. So I wanted to talk about the idea that I was trying to figure out where in the pilot we have the moments of revelation of her character. Moments where we say, oh, like at the beginning we meet her and she turns down a job. So now we know, she tells us, I like my little safe space. That's who she is then. Then that has that all ripped away from her by the news that her ex-husband of 30 years ago has died, and she's still his next of kin. She's gonna have to take over his belongings. And then the question is, where does she actually talk about what she felt about him, what she's feeling now? and what I wanted to talk to you about is that you don't really have it. You're not really ready or able to write the scene correctly until you have both the idea, the insight, the character moment, and character um, feeling, and the moment that we get it. Because you don't get it over and over, and you don't get it sort of in a mushy way. This is one of the most important things about screenwriting, especially, frankly, all narrative writing. Something happens in a moment. And for the audience, when that moment has happened, when we have seen how that person feels at that moment, that crystallizes it. And then from then on, something has to happen because of that or to change that. You don't just sort of have a general sense of her and George. You have a moment when she talks about George. And so it struck me that this diner scene wasn't yet a moment. So you need to have both. You need to have the insight. And the point about this scene is that she is going to, I realized, this is the first time she's nice about George. She's fond. She's letting in her feelings. Because remember, what I decided about the earlier section is it was all about not letting in her feelings. Denial, anger, those parts of it. Now, and then George sort of got pushed to the side. Now we're finally getting the moment when she shows fondness for George. Okay, so I realized that's part of what's happening here. And I thought about, what is she deciding at this moment? Because this scene, it's in two parts. The first time, hello, Michael. Just want to pause to shout out to people, call out people when they come in. This scene is two scenes. There's a scene where she and George, she and Norman start to, they are relaxed. They're talking. They've had a nice meal. They've talked about stuff that has, as she said, made her forget that she's there because her husband was murdered. And so it comes back, and then she gets upset and she walks out of the diner. And that was where we left off. And what I realized is, I don't know why. Hi, Jose. I don't know why she's upset. She has a lot of things she could be upset about. And this is one of the nasty traps of writing. If you have 4 or 5 possible things you can be upset about, you're not, that's completely unworkable. You need to choose one thing in a moment. You can have all of them at certain points. There can be a conflict of them, but one of them is ruling the moment. And I thought, what is, of all the things that she's upset about and makes her walk away from this nice time with Norman and go outside, what is it that's bothering her? And what I thought about was that when she goes out, the thing she says is, the big revelation is, she can't go back to her old life. This event, George's murder, has disrupted a 30-year holding down of certain feelings. And now they're up, and she can't just go back to pretending like she doesn't have them. So that's the revelation of this sequence. So what I need to do is get her to that. And what I realized, there's a topic that they didn't talk about, which is the murder. They didn't talk about the fact that, they talk about the fact that he's murdered and her feelings about it, but they didn't talk about what the hell happened here? Is this really a serial killer killing my ex-husband? And she asks Norman that. She says, is it possible this isn't that? And he, being not as emotionally involved and being a reporter, says, well, it might not be that. It could be a copycat, but it sure is a murder. So that insight, my ex-husband was murdered, and we don't know why or who did it, that's a biggie. And I want to put that at the end of the scene. I think that is what's upsetting her. So, because what I wrote was, add a beat. Is it possible this is not a serial killer? Yes, sure, it could be a copycat, but no matter what, is a mystery. Norman. Okay, so this beat I'm going to put at the end. Okay, boom. Apologizing. Okay, so add a beat. Okay, so now this scene is beginning to make sense. And then I got to the question of, well, actually, a lot of this started. That was one thing that was on my mind, but then I thought this beat, I am in over my head. Man, do we already know that? Okay, we've seen in the first half, like scene after scene, that said I am in over my head. So we do not need this. Boom. And Matthew, yes, it's not that she still loves him. It's that she is letting herself remember that she did love him, which is different. Herself to remember she did love George. And that's already in the speech. That she's allowing herself to remember that. She in the speech as it exists in the rough draft. Oh gosh, we've got a Russian bot. Let me remove this Russian bot. And for those of you who are Russian and not bots, you're welcome. I'm happy to have people here from Russia. I am not happy to have Russian bots. Okay. Cool. So, this one, not sure about where it goes, but I did like that moment when she gets kind of defensive on feelings. Not sure where. Okay, then 5. Boom. Okay, see how we're doing this? We are reshaping this scene. But the other thing is, I knew that we needed to open, excuse me, with a comfortable beat, with them sitting and having a great conversation, and then her to say, wow, this is nice. I kind of forgot why I'm here. So I knew that we need a comfortable beat to open. But what, and I thought about what could that be? It could be more talk about the crazy group, or it could be more talk about his book or his relationship histories. But I realized every single one of those is more talk about a beat. And it's really a good idea to question anytime you are doing more of a beat, when you are repeating a subject. This is a tricky topic. Repetition is generally not good. Most things in a story should be news, should be change. I apologize. But now and then, repetition is powerful because you are bringing back something. Now, of course, sometimes you're bringing it back and adding or changing to it, so that's actually not just repetition. Now and then, you can do repetition as a way of suggesting the intensity or relentlessness of an experience. But usually you kind of edge it up every time. Like if there's something that's like they're getting turned down for something and you want it to happen 3 times in a row because it's funny, it should not be the exact same beat every time. There has to be some change. So in this case, when I was saying more talk about this or more talk about that, I was thinking information. I was thinking, oh, that's some information I could let out. Beware when you are thinking information, because usually it kills the flow of the story unless it's attached to a dramatic moment. So what I thought here was, what if they're talking about their lives now? And what if she's telling us about her life? Because we have not seen it. And what I thought was, in describing her life, because we've only seen her at her office, we don't know who she is personally, and it would be nice to have her sort of talk about that because it's gone. And I thought about the dating history, because he's going to talk about all the terrible dates he has as the series goes on. That's like a running thing for Norman. He's had his terrible relationship history, and I kind of wanted Madelyn to be radically different from that. And the first scene where she brings up this subject, she says that. She says, I don't do this. I don't just meet someone and sleep with them. So I like the idea, about, I don't know, 5, 6 more years ago, when Tim Gunn first burst into public, when Project Runway was really big, Tim Gunn became very popular, and he was interviewed on an NPR show called Fresh Air, and it was a marvelous interview. He's a great guy, and he was talking about his celibacy, about the fact that he just didn't do it with people. And they sort of hinted to, does that mean he didn't do anything, like even with himself? And he's like, no. And he didn't want to get into it, and there was no reason to get into it. And that's what I wanted to get here, is that she's not anti-sex, she's anti-dating. Not anti-sex, anti-dating. That the sex with the other person brings too much of the other person into her life, and so she's just doing without that. So that's her character. I like that. So that is the decision, that it's going to be a comfortable beat, talking about their lives now. There we go. Norman is accepting her. Accepting her. That is the key. There we go. Now, hello, N. Are you raising a question, or are you saying hi? That's the problem with emojis. Okay, Jose, when I say beat, do I referring to an acting beat? No, I am referring to a story beat. I am referring to a section of story with a particular action. Yes, the actors will act in an acting beat, but I don't mean a pause. I mean a beat when, meaning an action where someone is trying to do something and the other people are dealing with that, and that topic, that move, that whatever it is that's happening before there's a change is a beat. In this case, this scene is made of 3 or 4 beats. In other words, there's one where they're talking about her life, and then she feels self-conscious about enjoying herself, so she changes the subject. That's part 2. So I often like to identify the sections of the scene, because that way you don't go sprawling. You're like, this is the way scenes are built, and this is the way conversations actually kind of happen if you keep your eye on them, especially in stories where they're under control. Somebody will, like whatever happened right before this scene, they got to a place where they wanted to talk. They were talking about themselves. They were getting to know you because they were dating. Okay, cool. Yeah, life is full of complexity there. And even the most simple emoji. Anyway, so they've begun to enjoy sharing, getting to know you. This is a date, actually. And then, because she is having a date with a man she met because her ex-husband was murdered, she suddenly sort of pulls back on it and brings that to awareness. We may or may not get this, which is this little beat where he's saying, oh, it's okay to have feelings. And she's like, I know. Screw that. I know how to have feelings, which of course she doesn't. That's why it's interesting. And then we need to get into the past, that the important idea that she did love him back at that time. And what she's secretly thinking is, I loved him and I was a different person then. And I didn't even let myself see that. Then we need to add a beat about mystery. So now this scene, and this is sort of what I wanted to talk about here. When you are conceiving of, this is a complex dialogue scene. This is high wire act for writing in screenwriting in some ways, because this is a dialogue scene which goes from place to place to place. There's a movement that has to be coherent and dramatic. It has to be going in one direction from the comfort of the date towards her confrontation with the murder. That's the shape of this scene. In fact, oh, sorry about that. Let me put this back where it belongs. Okay. The shape of this scene. She moves from the comfort of a date to the awareness of the murder. That is the big picture of this scene. Now, this is really useful to think about. When you outline a story, this scene, that scene, this scene. An outline is a list of scenes, but within each scene, you can sort of mini outline, because that scene may have movements within it. Some scenes are pretty simple. Somebody comes in, goes, you murdered my uncle, and then shoots them. That's, boom. But a lot of scenes, they have a couple of moves, because there is this sense of beats. You could call them different things. I like to call them beats just because it's a acting thing that I don't know. I heard about it, I guess. Anyway, it's important to remember that you can outline within a scene, like the outline within the outline. That's often really helpful. Sometimes characters switch moves so fast I cringe a little, like there was not even a bill suddenly say, you mean in other people's stuff or yours? But yes, yeah, it depends. Like the good like hopefully the writer or the director or whoever has not just like said, oh, we need to get to this thing, and so they jam it in fast. Most people making movies or shows are conscious of not being slow, not being boring. I don't always think it is boring. It can be really nice to indulge that, but it's unusual. Okay. Well, no, there's no, like, this is, Matthew, you're doing the thing that I'm glad you did it, because I can warn against it, which is just trying to sort of patch in a reason for a thing without making it flow in the story. In this case, she doesn't need a tattoo of her ex. Her ex is hanging over the whole scene, because remember, the whole story is about how this man got murdered and she got dragged down there and he got dragged down there. So everything that happens between them is haunted is overshadowed by George. And so therefore, we don't need an external excuse to think about her husband. The whole point about this scene is that she is recognizing that for just a moment she wasn't thinking about him. That's the cool structure of this scene. It's always important to put everything that happens in a scene and in the story in the context. That's the reason we're doing this character outline, in the context of these people's lives. Madelyn, that's sort of how you keep telling yourself this story over and over. We meet this woman, middle-aged woman in a corporate job, very, very content with her ritual, with her safety, with her familiarity. And then the rug is pulled out under her because she is forced to go to the home of a man she hasn't seen in 30 years, the man whose flamboyant life scared her so badly that she went to this 30-year locked-in life. And so for the first half of the story, she is trying to keep him out. And then she gets high and she ends up sleeping with this guy. So this is really the first moment in this whole thing when she is really letting him in. This is the first full moment when she is really letting George back in her feelings. So we will just identify this. So what I'm doing is I'm really trying to understand where Madelyn's feelings are, as if she is going down a river or traveling on a path. And that in that path, she's not going to, it's always specific. That is the key to outlining. At any moment on the path, you are only in one place, and you got there because you came from the last place and you are headed towards the next place. That's what a story is. That's what an outline is identifying. We started her in this place. She got pushed off her track and she went to this other place and she's pushing against that. And then this thing comes and opens up her feelings, and that's where she is now. And then the question is, what's she going to do then? And what she does is says, I can't handle this. And she tries to leave, but she realizes she can't. That is where we are. So for a great example of this, meaning that kind of conversation, yes, I agree. And what, those are great scenes for that, because Tony Soprano and the Dr. Melfi, that's the therapist name, he'll come in and he'll have something on his mind, something is because of another scene before that, we know it's bothering him. But he comes in, very often he will come in fighting that feeling. He will come in denying it or explaining it away in some way. And she will ask him some questions or sometimes challenge him. Sometimes he will just push back harder. Sometimes she will kind of trick him into seeing things. It's a complicated game, but all they're doing, as Ann is pointing out, is just two people sitting in chairs, looking at each other, talking. And yet there is dramatic action. And something is happening in that scene. He is working on whatever he brought in. Or now and then, as the series goes on, she's working on what she brought in because she has feelings about him, which are all over the map too. Okay, so the point is, we have now, okay, we've got this scene right. Boom. And it goes over here. Which brings me to these questions. Which is, she comes out here. And what I like about the thing that I like about the rough draft is I stumbled into this moment of her realizing that she can't go back. um, so the the whole the whole story is building to this moment, about how she feels like she's sort of falling out of an airplane. um, and the last beat I have is "wanna hang out," which I kind of like, but there isn't. It's a little vague. It suggests that she hasn't made a decision yet. She's just kind of stalling and saying, "I want to live in this moment," and maybe that's true. I have to think about it, but I decided to ask myself some questions. This is really important. I'm going to pause for a second to remind you of the video I did, A Process of Questions. This video, which this is the thumbnail of, it's really important to ask questions as your way of working your way through the script, not apply formula, not say, okay, this is where this thing is supposed to happen. I mean, yes, you have to keep that in mind, but the main thing you have to ask is, why is it happening? What do they need? What am I trying to accomplish? Ask questions as your way of working forward. That really, really, really helps. Okay, so the question I had is, what is she deciding at this moment? And what I realized is she's deciding not to go home. When she says, "I can't go home," let's move this to its rightful place. Okay. Now this begins to make sense. She's saying, "Want to hang out?" And I asked a question. What is she deciding at this moment? And I thought, I don't think it's just, I don't know what I want, like, let's just hang out. And I think that I haven't quite figured out where, but I realized that this should not just be, I made it a legal thing. She has to come deal with his will. But then I thought, well, then who did he leave stuff to? Did he leave a will, etc., etc.? And then I thought, why not just make it simple? He died. He's still married to her. She is technically his next of kin and executor. And if he doesn't have a will, it's all hers. And that's powerful. That's extra crazy making. That's extra strong and simple, because now she has stuff she has to deal with, keeps her, that will give her a reason to stay there. I am not sure whether the thing is, possibly she is deciding at this moment to stay and deal with George's stuff. So let's just put this, she has inherited. It's really important to make that clear here. Okay, cool. All right. So then I thought about the fact that George, like, why did she inherit? Why, like, did he leave, if he had girlfriends or friends in this town, he's lived in this town, and the cop has said earlier that George had a whole life here. He wasn't a lonely sad sack. He was a popular bartender in this town who also did podcasts on the side, but his way of making a living was to be a bartender. So I thought, maybe we should get into that stuff here. And actually, I'm going to... Yeah. Okay. So just make sure that the audience knows, like, that George was a happy guy. He wasn't pining for her. He had just never that she would never gotten divorced. Um, that's actually interesting. Um, is it that he never changed her will, or they never got to? No, they have to have gotten divorced. So therefore, because even though they got divorced, he never changed his will. That is the point. Everything. Okay. I don't think so. Maybe down the line that could go up, but honestly, his money, property, and possessions is pretty shabby, and she's doing better in her life than he was in his life. She was making a good corporate living and having a much more affluent life than he was. So why would she go back 30 years and murder this poor guy to get his money? So I don't really see that making much sense. I have to disagree. I have to strongly disagree. You guys have got to put things in context. Remember the story as a whole. It's not just a murder, it's this murder. It's not just a character, a relationship, it's these. And we have made a lot of choices. Actually, this is a great thing to talk about. As you make choices, like we've made a lot of choices. We have a whole 90 pages worth of defining things where somebody has become specific. And once you have that, a million possibilities go away, which is great. That is one of the best things about writing, because at any moment, there are too many possibilities. There are a billion things you could write or choose, a billion lines. And the only thing that you want to do is by cutting away certain things, by saying this isn't a Western, by saying it's not political, by saying blah, 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 you are getting rid of some things so that you get it down to maybe 10 possibilities, maybe 4 or 5, because you're going to have to choose one every step of the way. You are never allowed to do more than one thing at a time. So all of writing is a matter of limiting the rational possibilities so that you only have a couple, and then there's a pleasure in starting to sort those out and choose them, because every time you choose one, you remove others and open up others. That's the writing game. That's it right there. So the most important thing to do when you start to think about, like, is she a suspect, is why would this person be a suspect? Yes, in theory, a husband or wife would be a suspect. But in this case, she hasn't seen him or heard of him and clearly didn't even think about him for 30 years. And she's doing better than him. So absolutely not. There's no rational reason why we would bother bringing that up, except that it's in the atmosphere of things you can do with murders. And the most important thing you want to do is use what you have, is not just be groping every minute, but feeling the excitement of getting more specific. That's the best thing about writing, is how you get more and more and more specific until you're just deciding what words to use. Okay, so let's go. So then I thought about the fact that she should talk about this town, this bar, these people, and I had a question for myself. I said, well, maybe, when they go out to eat, maybe they go to the bar he used to work at. But I realized that was too much too soon. We'd be adding other people that they would be talking to, and they would be dealing with her, who they have heard about but never met. There was just way too much, because this scene is about her and Norman. Once again, you're using what you've got. This scene is about her and Norman. But I did want to bring up the concept that she's in George's life. She's in the place of George's life and doesn't know anything about it. So but that's not in this episode. So what I'm going to do here is, I don't know if you remember, because this is a series and there are going to be things that happen in the series that don't happen in the pilot I'm writing, the outline is just the outline of the pilot. I also made this other document where I throw in all sorts of stuff that I know will come into the series later. Down the line, Madelyn's got to meet George's world. Madelyn's got to deal with George's life. There's interesting stuff to be explored there, series-wise. So I'm going to put that note into the series outline and then just put it away. But this is what Madelyn is saying. It's not just want to hang out. It's want to stick around with me. This, I don't know what I want to do, but I am not going back to my old job. I'm taking my vacation. This is a person who's gone to work every day and has not had great, time off. So this is what she is saying. Yeah. There you go. Look at that. And now this scene has a shape because she comes out and she's like, the last thing she thought of when she was sitting in the, hey, I'm not sure what that oh my God is about. So I'm just going to say, what? Let me know what that meant. Unless you're just trolling me, in which case, stop. So here's the thing. The last thing in the diner, the thing that pushed her out was, oh my God, there's a murder. And then she goes outside and she looks around and she realizes, I don't want to hunt a serial killer. I don't want that. And then he says, so go home. And then she says, I can't go home either. And that's when she really decides, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to stay here and deal with this. Does not want to hunt a serial killer. Okay, so now this scene has a shape, and this scene has a shape, this scene has a shape, and this scene has a shape. And that is why we outline, because now I've tracked her through these different experiences, but they're caused by each other or by other pressures that have been building up. So that it's not just like this thing, this thing, this thing. It's this thing causes that thing. She's happy with Norman. that causes her to feel guilty about George, that causes her to finally let her feelings out about George, that causes her to confront the reality of murder, that causes her to panic and realize that she can't handle that, that causes her to realize she can't go back to safety. Boom, boom, boom. Cause. Things are happening because the other thing pushed her to it. That is, yes, George, well, he was kind of, he ate the poison in this house and then died outside. I've been told about my first episode that I showed a lot without showing anything. I thought that nailed it. Yeah, depending on how it was meant, yeah, cool. that is marvelous. That is a great thing. We all aspire to do two things. One is really rivetingly track a story, and the other is show a whole bunch of stuff that's kind of revealed through the story without being named. That is exactly the point of good dramatic writing. So, wow, look at this. Look at how we have done this. We are making, boom, progress. Okay. Whew. That was fun. That was a lot of accomplishment. Now, what we did was we came up with so much more specific reasons for this intense two-person sequence of scenes, of beats in these sequence of breakfast scenes, and I really like that. That is good stuff. Well, it's a mystery. That's a good thing then. Mysteries are particularly tricky because you want to lay in the clues, but not just lay in the clues. You can't have everything just be clue, clue, clue. Because first of all, character is important. But also, the tricky thing about mysteries, but really about any story, is you need to give us the pieces in such a way that they seem to have a meaning, but they also open up a question. And those unanswered questions are what make us keep watching, turn the page, ask themselves. The audience is working. The audience is always, this is a biggie, the audience is always working in a story. This is a famous fallacy about the difference between reading and watching stuff. Oh, if you're watching TV, you're just passively sitting there. That's nonsense. That's ridiculous. That's just crappy non-watching. If you're actually watching a story and engaged in it, you are working. That each scene is giving you a piece, which is traveling along that track, but at the same time, it is opening up a question. What are they going to do about that? How is that going to be resolved? That's the whole point of a story. The audience should be asking themselves questions that the story is not explicitly asking. The story is giving them the material so they can just see. Obviously, I was just watching a show, and there was a kid who is very unhappy. His father's just died, and he's trapped with his mother, who has a really bad relationship with, and you just know that he's going to have to deal with his trauma. And the question is how. And so everything that happens is sort of like a clue about it. And then all they have to do is start. They start the episode. It's a show called Station 11, which is okay. It's got its flaws and it's got its real advantages. But this episode starts where you see this kid carrying a tank of gasoline towards a jet. And the point, and then you don't know why, you don't know anything yet. And then you go back and you find out that this kid is trapped in this airport. There's a pandemic, and all these people are trapped in the airport. And that, anyway, the point is, at no point does anyone say, well, is this kid going to do something horrible? But because of each scene showing his inability to be understood by the adults, you know that there's this pressure building. And so although a scene may just be an adult putting him down or an adult trying to manipulate him, you recognize the building pressure. Okay. Yes, indeed. That is exactly right. And that brings us to 50 minutes. We've been here almost an hour, so I'm going to just say, anybody got any questions? Because I'm going to be signing off soon, but I want to give you the opportunity. You got a few minutes here. I'm going to pause. We stopped at a good place. We just did this whole, like the thing that I was worried about most in Madelyn's story, we have built to. Now, actually, let's see. Okay, if nobody has any question, I'm just going to zoom into the next stuff, because the next scene is they get home and they find Xena. That's an obvious scene. They get home. We know where they're coming home to start this new relationship mystery, mystery of their relationship, not mystery of George, exploration of their future. And instead they find Xena, dragging them back into the murder mystery. That's not where their heads were at. So that's fine. We know what that means. But then I thought about the next scene as two sections in the rough draft. The first section is Xena is like trying to play them by flattering them about, oh, you two hooked up. I'm so glad. I want to be part of this romance, blah, blah, blah. Not part of the romance between them, but like I want to be the one who knows, the confidant. You can trust me, blah, blah, blah. So Xena is using this new made intimacy because she reads the room. She recognizes there's something going on between these two people. And so she does what she always does. When you can have a character do what they do because of their nature, some people are very threatening. Some people are very greedy. Some people are very healing, whatever it is. Xena is always trying to manipulate people by becoming their buddy. And so we get to see her doing that. But the thing is, the end of the scene is that Madelyn says, thank you very much, but no, you cannot take over George's podcast. I own his life. I am saying no. So that is the point. The point is that she is the grown-up in the room here. These people can pretend to be serial killer hunters all they want, but she owns this material. She owns George's stuff, and she is calling the game. She's saying no more. So, Mad is smart and sees it when Xena's her new. This is what's happening in this scene. Is she good at it? By which you mean Xena? She's great at it. That is Xena. We're going to watch Xena be really good at it. She's kind of going to do it to us in the audience, I hope. There we go. So there, and that's actually the fulfillment of Madelyn's arc in this episode. We have met Madelyn as this kind of repressed corporate drone, and then she's been rattled and shaken, and she's tried not to deal with things, and then she's fallen for Norman, and she's begun to own that, begun to say, I am setting out on a journey of discovery. And then, oh gosh, another Russian bot. You are banned, Mr. Bot. Okay, so Madelyn opens herself up to new things, to Norman, and that empowers her when Xena comes along and says, ooh, let me manipulate you and get you to help me let George's evidence, blah, blah, blah. Madelyn takes a stand. The inner strength of Madelyn. Madelyn is a strong person. For all the flaws in her character that we have seen in this episode, she has at her core the strength that she had to leave George is still there. The strength that she has had to run her life and her department is there. And what I love about this is that that would be enough for an episode in some ways. But this episode is going to take that. It's going to give us Madelyn coming to her strength, coming to her ownership of this story. And then this other thing is going to come in, the serial killer, and completely give her a whole new set of problems. So that's cool. That's a pleasing shape. Like when you watch an episode, you are conscious that the authors know what you are thinking. I say, oh, I see. Look, Madelyn's strong. Huh, Madelyn's strong, but now she's working with a serial killer. What's going to happen? That's what we want at the end of a pilot episode. You want a sense of, I have really gotten into these characters and oh my God, at the end, something has to blow your mind of like, okay, I do not know what this is going to do. In The Sopranos, to talk about The Sopranos and his therapist, that episode begins with a mob boss talking to a therapist. Oh, I know. And then we get this sense of his conflict, but the very end of that episode is his recognition of his deep, deep emotional vulnerability. That's the end of the pilot episode. The pilot episode could have ended a lot of different ways. Could have ended with him saying like, I'm the violent leader of this gang. But the end of The Sopranos, the thing that really opens up the what's going to happen is after all the monstrousness we see during the episode, it ends on his vulnerability. Our pilot is going to end on these people who we have come to like are finding themselves inextricably teamed up, involved with a retired serial killer. That is a what's going to happen situation. If you were to sell this thing, what happens to all this you know about the characters that people might miss? Well, this is interesting, or get lost on rewriting. Well, I'll tell you, that's tricky. In theory, if I were to sell this and I would become a member of the writing staff, ideally the person who is the showrunner would be me. That's not going to happen because that's a job that requires experience. And I have never been a showrunner, and no one is going to give me tens of millions of dollars, which is what any show, the cheapest show in the world, we're talking multiple tens of millions of dollars to make a series. And so therefore, they want someone who has proved themselves capable of the job. So the answer is either the showrunner gets it, or the showrunner talks to me and keeps me on the staff and works with me on it. But really, what happens is the showrunner's got to take it and make it theirs. Okay, yeah, mobsters are people too, indeed. So the answer is, if I were to, the tricky thing about outsiders, beginners, selling a series pilot is that you have to recognize that the showrunner is going to have to make it their own. And some things are things can very much change. That's part of the reality of the business. Roy, slightly off topic, but right to me, ask me. Yes, absolutely. I try to do them every week, but certainly probably towards the end of this week I'll do one. And then I try to do them every week if I can, unless things come along and knock episodes out. And then sometimes I don't. So if you have a question, since I don't always know when I'm going to do one of those, I would urge you to, hold on, let's do this right. Contact me. If you go to writingforscreens.com and click contact me, you can write me an email and ask the question that you want in the Ask Me Almost Anything. because then, first of all, I'll have time to prepare a decent answer. And second of all, if I can't answer it in that way, I'll answer you directly in the email. So that's the answer. If you haven't asked me almost anything, go to writingforscreens.com and click contact me. It will open up a little window that sends me an email. And that's the best way to get into that. So there you go. Sorry I don't plan more as far as when I'm going to do the Ask Me Almost Anything full sessions. But this is Wednesday, so probably, I don't know, probably Friday, but I could like tomorrow just say, oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow. I don't know. Sorry. Okay. There you go. I guess probably the two working on might differ depending on the script. Well, it depends by which I think you mean depending whether or not the writer, the original writer and the showrunner are going to work together. That depends on the people. That depends on how much the showrunner has mental space to deal with collaborating with the original writer and how well they get along. Okay, so we've gone a whole hour. It is time for me to say goodbye. So I will say see you tomorrow. And in the meantime, go write something.